While crypto traders were arguing about meme coins and watching daily price charts last week, something happened that most people have not yet processed the significance of. Ripple executives sat in a closed-door meeting at the White House. Brad Garlinghouse was named to a government advisory committee. Ripple's head of partner success confirmed publicly that they are doing roundtables with crypto leaders and the Trump administration to help design the rules of the road. Not lobbying from the outside, not hoping for favorable treatment, actually collaborating on the framework. The war between crypto and the US government is over, and Ripple did not just survive it, Ripple won it, and then got invited to help write the next chapter. But here's the part that should stop every single person watching this cold. Because the government pivot is not even the most important development. The most important development is a number. A number that proves the transformation is not approaching. It is not scheduled. It is not being planned. It is already here. $33 trillion. That is the volume stablecoins processed in 2025. 33 trillion. That is double Visa's entire annual transaction volume. And it happened while 99% of the world still thought crypto was internet funny money. The shift already happened. The question is whether you understand that, while there is still time to be on the right side of it. Welcome back. I'm the calm analyst. No hype, no speculation, just the numbers and the structure they reveal. Let's go deep. Let's start with the hard truth that the crowd consistently gets wrong about how financial revolutions actually happen. Retail investors look for the announcement. They look for the headline that says everything has changed. They wait for the moment when it is obvious. When stablecoin payments are as normal as Venmo, when every bank has a blockchain settlement layer, when XRP is a household name, and they plan to position themselves around that moment of obvious clarity. Here's the problem with that strategy. By the time something is obvious, the positioning opportunity is gone. The people who captured the asymmetric return on the internet were not the ones who bought Amazon stock in 2005 when it was clearly successful. They were the ones who bought it in 1997 when it looked like an online bookstore with an uncertain future. The people who captured the asymmetric return on mobile were not the ones who bought Apple in 2012 when the iPhone was dominant. They were the ones who bought it in 2007 when it looked like an expensive gadget for early adopters. The pattern in every transformational technology is identical. The infrastructure gets built quietly. The numbers start moving before the narrative catches up. And then one day the mainstream looks up and realizes the transformation has already happened, and the positioning window has already closed. Stablecoins processed $33 trillion in 2025. That number did not make the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It did not lead the evening news. Most people who work in finance have not internalized what it means. But the number is real, and it is the clearest signal that the transformation is not coming. It is already operating at scale. Let me run the math that most people are not doing, because the $33 trillion number is remarkable enough on its own, but the growth rate underneath it is where the real story lives. Visa processes approximately $16 to $17 trillion in annual transaction volume. Stablecoins processed $33 trillion in 2025, roughly double Visa's entire network. But Visa has been building its infrastructure for over 60 years. Stablecoins achieved double Visa's volume in a fraction of that time frame, and the growth rate is accelerating, not decelerating. Stablecoin volume is up 72% year over year. Active users across stablecoin networks are up 146%, spanning 106 countries. The market cap of stablecoins has reached $320 billion. These are not early adoption metrics. These are scaling metrics. The S-curve has already passed its inflection point. Now look at the use case breakdown, because this is where the $33 trillion stops being an abstract number and becomes a concrete picture of what is actually changing. Cross-border business-to-business payments conducted via stablecoin jumped 733% in a single year. 733%. That represents $266 billion in global stablecoin flows for B2B cross-border payments alone. Companies that used to wait 3 to 5 business days and pay 3 to 7% in fees to send money internationally are now settling in under a second for fractions of a cent. Remittances are being rebuilt from scratch. The traditional rails, Western Union, MoneyGram, legacy wire services, charge 7 to 10% of the transfer amount, and take days to deliver. Stablecoins charge fractions of a cent and settle in seconds. For the families in Turkey, Nigeria, the UAE, and across Africa who depend on remittances from abroad, families for whom a 7% fee represents real food and real rent, this is not a financial product upgrade. It is a life-changing economic event. Corporate treasury departments are redesigning their entire operations around stablecoin settlement. Multinational corporations, with cash sitting in 12 different countries, burning millions annually on currency conversion costs and waiting days for settlement to clear, are discovering that stablecoins allow them to move that cash instantly, convert back to local currency at destination, and eliminate the entire settlement lag. The CFO of any company operating in multiple currencies has a direct financial incentive, measurable in millions of dollars annually, to adopt this infrastructure. The Treasury Secretary of the United States has stated publicly that stablecoins could create $2 trillion in demand for U.S. Treasuries, up from approximately $300 billion today. That is not a bullish projection from a crypto advocate. That is the U.S. government's own assessment of the economic impact of what is already happening in the stablecoin market. Now let's talk about where Ripple sits inside this transformation, because the government relationship story and the stablecoin utility story connect directly to XRP in a way that most coverage has not made explicit. Ripple's head of partner success confirmed it clearly. Ripple has 4 products: Ripple Payments, the XRP Ledger, RLUSD, and Custody. All 4 of them use XRP. The payment product uses XRP as a bridge asset for cross-border settlement. RLUSD, Ripple's dollar-backed stablecoin, operates on the XRP ledger. The custody product holds XRP alongside other digital assets. The ledger itself is the infrastructure layer that everything runs on. This is not a company with XRP as a side project. This is a company whose entire product architecture is built around XRP's utility. When Ripple grows, XRP's utility grows. When Ripple's stablecoin processes volume, it processes that volume on the XRP ledger. When Ripple's payment product moves money across borders, XRP is the bridge. And Ripple is now sitting at the table with the US government, helping design the regulatory framework for digital assets. Roundtables with the Trump administration. A closed-door White House stablecoin meeting. Brad Garlinghouse on a government advisory committee. The Genius Act, stablecoin legislation, advancing with Ripple actively involved in shaping it. This is not a company hoping the government will eventually be friendly to its business. This is a company that fought the government for 5 years, won, and then got invited to help design the rules. That is a positioning outcome that no other company in the crypto industry has achieved. And the government's motivation is not altruistic. The US government understands that dollar-backed stablecoins are a financial weapon. $2 trillion in new treasury demand. Dollar dominance extended into digital corridors that traditional banking cannot reach. American companies leading the infrastructure transition so that the dollar remains at the center of the new financial system. Ripple is the American company the US government has chosen to help build that future. The Ripple Partner Success executive said it directly. There has been a massive mindset shift, especially for American companies. The US being very, very proactive on regulatory clarity. The America First framing is real, and Ripple is positioned as the American infrastructure provider at the center of it. Let me stack the broader institutional evidence, because Ripple's government relationships are one layer of a validation picture that is stacking from multiple independent directions simultaneously. The DTCC, which processes $2.5 quadrillion annually, has Hidden Road, a Ripple acquisition, integrated into its back-end infrastructure. The DTCC has its regulatory no-action letter and is launching its tokenization service this year. TCS Banks, the core banking infrastructure processing $40 trillion in securities annually across more than 100 countries, has Ripple documented in its Quartz Gateway architecture. The Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of America, Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, Santander, Standard Chartered, CIBC, and Westpac are all confirmed governance partners in Ripple's network. MasterCard is piloting RLUSD settlement on the XRP ledger, treating stablecoins as native currency on its network and building agent payment infrastructure on top of it. G-Treasury, acquired by Ripple, processes $16 trillion in annual payment flows across 1,000 corporate clients in 160 countries, now being integrated with on-chain settlement rails. Japan has a live trade finance platform on the XRP ledger targeting a $10 trillion annual market. The XLS 66 amendment is advancing through validator review, which would introduce native lending and yield directly on the ledger, turning idle XRP into productive capital without third-party risk. Each of these is a real, documented, institutional-grade validation of the same thesis, and they are all activating simultaneously. Not because someone coordinated the timing, but because they are all responding to the same underlying reality. The global financial system is migrating onto blockchain rails. The US government has chosen to lead that migration rather than resist it, and Ripple has built the infrastructure that makes it possible. Here is the catalyst that ties all of this into a specific timeline. Because the Clarity Act is the legislative piece that converts the current environment from promising to transformational. Brad Garlinghouse has publicly stated his expectations around the Clarity Act timeline. The bill defines market structure for digital assets, which assets fall under SEC jurisdiction, which fall under the CFTC, how exchanges operate, how institutional participation is structured. It is the last major piece of regulatory infrastructure that has been missing. Without the Clarity Act, institutional compliance officers still have ambiguity around certain digital asset classifications. With it, the legal framework is complete. Every U.S. institution that has been maintaining Ripple relationships under NDA, unable to go fully public due to regulatory uncertainty, gains the framework to announce and scale. Every exchange that was cautious about expanding XRP products gains clarity to proceed. Every ETF product in the pipeline gains the legal certainty its managers need to launch. The stablecoin framework is already advancing through the Genius Act, the market structure framework through the Clarity Act, the tokenization infrastructure through the DTCC deployment, the payment rails through Ripple's institutional partnerships, the regulatory relationships through the White House roundtables. All of these are in motion right now. All of them have specific near-term timelines, and all of them converge on the same outcome: a legally clear, institutionally validated, U.S. government-endorsed digital payment infrastructure with XRP at the center of the settlement layer. When that convergence becomes visible to the mainstream, when the $33 trillion in stablecoin volume becomes a headline, when the Clarity Act passes, when the first wave of institutional announcements come from companies that have been operating under NDA, the positioning window that exists today will close. I want to address something directly that I think is worth saying clearly. The $33 trillion stablecoin volume number should be the most talked about development in all of finance right now. It is not. Most retail investors in the crypto space are still focused on short-term price movements, on what Bitcoin is doing, on whether the market is up or down this week. They have not absorbed the significance of what the stablecoin volume numbers are telling them. Double Visa's annual volume, 72% year-over-year growth, 146% growth in active users, 733% growth in B2B cross-border payments. These numbers are not describing an emerging technology. They are describing a technology that has already crossed the threshold from early adoption to mainstream utility. The crossing already happened. It just happened without an announcement. And Ripple is positioned not just as a participant in that market, but as a company sitting at the table with the US government, helping write the rules for how that market develops. That is not a crypto company fighting for recognition. That is an infrastructure company that has won the legitimacy battle and is now being given the pen to help write the next chapter. The question is not whether this transformation happens. It is already happening at $33 trillion in annual volume and accelerating. The question is not whether XRP is involved. The four-product architecture that Ripple's own executives have confirmed, payments, ledger, RLUSD, custody, all using XRP, makes the involvement structural, not incidental. The question is not whether the institutional partnerships are real. The governance banks, the DTCC integration, the MasterCard pilot, the TCS Banks architecture are all documented. The only question is whether you understand what is happening while there is still time to be on the right side of it. Most people will understand it in 5 years when stablecoin payments are as normal as Venmo. You are understanding it now. That gap, between when something becomes undeniably obvious and when the informed can see it clearly, is where every major financial opportunity in history has lived. Here's what I want you to carry forward from everything we covered today. Stablecoins processed $33 trillion in 2025, double Visa's annual volume, with 72% year-over-year growth and active users up 146% across 106 countries. Cross-border B2B payments via stablecoin grew 733%. This is not early adoption. This is scale. Ripple executives attended a White House crypto summit, were invited to a closed-door stablecoin meeting, and are doing roundtables with the Trump administration to help design the regulatory framework. Brad Garlinghouse sits on a government advisory committee. The U.S. government has chosen Ripple as the American company building the infrastructure layer of the new financial system. All four Ripple products, payments, XRP Ledger, RLUSD, custody, use XRP. The DTCC is deploying tokenization infrastructure with Hidden Road integrated. MasterCard is piloting RLUSD settlement. G-Treasury is processing $16 trillion in annual flows. The Clarity Act is in final negotiation. The future of money is not coming. It is already processing $33 trillion a year. The infrastructure is not being planned. It is already documented in DTCC patents, TCS Bank's architecture diagrams, and White House meeting records. The transformation already happened. Most people just were not looking at the right numbers. Comment 33 below if you made it all the way through this analysis. I want to see who is reading the actual data, not just watching the chart. Stay patient. Stay rational. The US government chose Ripple. $33 trillion chose stablecoins. The market just has not caught up yet. We don't wait for the future. We plan for it.